the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared at a place called Fatima, Portugal. And she appeared to 3 shepherd children in a little valley called the Cova da Ira. The Mother of God would speak to a 10-year-old girl named Lucia, as well as her 2 cousins, a 9-year-old boy named Francisco and a 7-year-old girl named Jacinta. And she would speak to them on the 13th of the month, between the months of May and October, again in the year 1917. The Queen of Heaven and the Queen of the Most Holy Rosary provided a formula for true peace, a saving prescription that would bring about a triumph of her Immaculate Heart and the reign of Christ the King in the hearts and minds of men and also of nations. But the formula for peace and the triumph of Jesus, Mary, and Holy Church began always with the recitation of the Most Holy Rosary. The Queen instructed her 3 little subjects by saying, "Say the Rosary every day in order to obtain peace for the world and an end to the war," unquote. And furthermore, she encouraged these 3 children, 10, 9, and 7, to do penances and to make sacrifices for sinners that they might be saved from the fires of hell. And Our Lady also spoke of her most special role in crushing Satan and his unjust tyranny. The key to true human peace and human salvation was Marian devotion. Devotion to Our Lady, a consecration, in fact, of Russia and of every single human person to her Immaculate Heart. Now, on July 13th, as many of us know, in the year 1917, the 3 loyal subjects would have their 3rd audience with the Queen of Heaven. But this apparition proved to be a dire warning. A dire warning which included the horrible vision of hell itself, filled with countless souls. You see, if the Queen's formula for peace were not followed, many souls would be damned, and yet a worse war and greater sufferings would be experienced during the pontificate of Pope Pius XI. Our Lady is prophesying. Our Lady stated, quote, "If you see suddenly a bright unknown light one night, know this, that it is a sign from God which He is giving you to let you know that He is going to punish the world for her sins," unquote. This unusual event, this light in the night sky, did occur in Europe. It made all the papers in the year 1938, just days before Adolf Hitler took over the country of Austria in what is called the Anschluss. After being put in jail by a socialist Masonic Portuguese official during the month of August, the children would be visited by the Mother of God 3 more times, including that final visit on October 13th, 1917. And to prove that Our Lady had truly visited her subjects and that her message was most real, a miracle from heaven was provided for all to see that would rival and in some way surpass the very parting of the Red Sea during the time of Holy Moses. The children, it is said, knelt to pray the Holy Rosary with their Queen during a torrential rainfall at that valley known as the Cova da Ira. And then all of a sudden, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, and some 70,000 people witnessed a supernatural and almost cataclysmic event in the skies above. The sun resembled a flat plate of silver, and it was possible to stare at without the least bit discomfort. And suddenly, before the dazzled eyes of the people, the sun trembled. It made strange and abrupt movements outside of all cosmic laws. In short, the sun began to dance. And eventually the witnesses tell us that the sun raced towards the earth as if to destroy it, but then turned back and came to its original spot. Not only were the people safe from harm, but they found that their rain-soaked clothes and all the mud upon those clothes was all dry and all clean. Now, in the Apocalypse of St. John, chapter 12 to be exact, the Blessed Mother is shown as, quote, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars. She is queen of heaven and earth, of angels and men. But in that same very chapter, chapter 12 of the Apocalypse, there is made mention of a red dragon, a reptile, a red menace whose offspring included the Bolshevik Revolution. Our good Lord is a God of peace, and He's a God of reconciliation. But He has established from the very beginning an irreconcilable feud, an enmity, an enemy relationship between a woman and a serpent. If you go back to Adam and Eve, remember what God spoke after the sin, the fall of Adam and Eve. He said to the serpent and the woman the following: I will put enmity, an enemy relationship between you, serpent, and the woman, and between your offspring, serpent, and her offspring. The enmity, the enemy relationship is between Our Lady and the devil, between the queen and the unjust usurper, between her true subjects and the offspring and revolutionaries of Satan. And this irreconcilable feud will last until the end of time. And listen carefully, and it will only increase in intensity as each year passes. Sister Lucia, years after the apparition, Sister Lucia, again one of the visionaries of Fatima, stated the following in 1957. She said, quote, the Most Holy Virgin has told me that the devil is about to engage in a decisive battle against the Virgin, unquote. This decisive battle, what is it? A few years ago, I remember listening to a series of talks given by the great preacher, Archbishop Fulton Sheen, regarding the decisive battle that is obviously coming. Archbishop Sheen stated, quote, we are living in the days of the apocalypse, the last days of our era. Two great forces, the bishop writes, the mystical body of Christ and the mystical body of the Antichrist. And they're beginning to draw battle lines in this catastrophic contest. Again, the Archbishop continues, Satan will set up a counter-church, which will be the ape, the perverse imitator of the Catholic Church. It will be a religion without the cross. It will be a religion without the world to come. It will be a religion meant to destroy religions. There will be a counterfeit church, Fulton Sheen writes. This false church will be worldly, ecumenical, and global. The great preacher then concluded, it will be a world parliament of churches, and it will be emptied of all divine truth and content. It will be the mystical body of the Antichrist. Then he ends saying, the mystical body on earth today will have its Judas Iscariot, and he will be a false prophet. Satan will recruit him from our bishops, unquote. Again, words taken from Archbishop Fulton Sheen. This decisive battle, this contest. Not long ago, I ran across an interview given by Cardinal Carlo Caffarra of Bologna, Italy. And Cardinal Caffarra, in his interview, spoke of a correspondence that he had with Sister Lucia regarding this decisive battle. The Cardinal received a handwritten note from the visionary, Sister Lucia. And in it we find written the following, quote, the final battle between the Lord and the reign of Satan will be about marriage and family. Marriage and family, the final battle. Don't be afraid, Sister Lucia added, because anyone who works for the sanctity of marriage and family will always be opposed in every way, because this is the decisive battle, unquote. And then Sister Lucia concluded with hope, saying, don't worry, Our Lady has already crushed its head, the serpent's head. I'm reminded, too, of the approved apparition of Our Lady of Good Success in a place called Quito, Ecuador, in the early 1600s. Our Lady infallibly predicted our modern age. Our Lady, 400 years before the 20th century, told us what was going to happen. She said, the passions, lust, will erupt, and there will be a total corruption of morals. And as for the sacrament of matrimony, Our Lady of Good Success says, which symbolizes the union of Christ and His church, it will be attacked and deeply profaned. Freemasonry, which will then be in power, will enact evil laws with the aim of doing away with this sacrament, making it easy for everyone to live in sin and encouraging procreation of illegitimate children born without the blessing of the church. And then the Blessed Mother added this ominous statement, one that seems so true, especially today. She says, in this supreme moment of need in the church, the ones who should speak will fall silent. The ones who should speak in this decisive battle will fall silent. Yes, we clerics, the ones who are supposed to be the trumpets, who blow warnings, the deacons, the priests, the bishops, and yes, even popes, we have fallen silent. We spoke out a little bit about the issue of divorce, but eventually retreated in silence and began to multiply exponentially annulments. We cower before the world and failed to shepherd the faithful regarding the issue of the contraceptive mentality. We then whimpered over things like cohabitation, infidelity, and company keeping. And we were afraid of the women's movement and the power of feminist ideology. And so we gave in to the modern mindset and were quiet about wives being submissive to their husbands. And with the abomination of sodomy now legalized and heavily promoted, many Catholic clerics are being swept along in this modern wave of impurity, accepting or at least tolerating the sin which literally calls down vengeance from heaven. And with all this being said, with the notion of this decisive battle between the devil and Our Lady, between the church and a false church, especially a battle over marriage and family, I would be remiss if I did not mention that papal document put out last year. It is a document that has become the elephant in the room, an obvious and serious problem that few want to address. A document which has caused a small group of solid cardinals to put forth 5 dubia, a Latin word for doubts, serious doubts in this document regarding its content and its lack of orthodoxy. Pope Francis's document, namely Amoris Laetitia, the joy of married love, if it's translated, is more than problematic. It seems that the Holy Father has not just fallen silent amidst the attack upon marriage and family, but he seems to be promoting a very worldly agenda, which does not seem to be in line with divine revelation. In the document Amoris Laetitia, it seems that moral absolutes, expected of all, are now elevated ideals beyond the reach of many. Therefore, marriage becomes a high ideal, not an ordinary norm. Commandments, therefore, become like suggestions, only for those that have heroic virtue. The subjectivism of the document leads one to think that if your conscience says it's okay, then everything's fine. Claiming to be merciful, the Holy Father seems to remove much, if not all, moral responsibility, stating that many men and women, quote unquote, find themselves in irregular marriages, when in fact it's rather that these individuals have placed themselves in these difficult situations. And once again, this document employs what one commentator refers to as moral ecumenism. In other words, as Protestantism supposedly somehow participates in the fullness of the truth possessed by the Catholic Church, so cohabitation, shacking up, sodomical unions, and habitual adultery supposedly have many good, laudable elements, even if they fall short of the fullness of marriage. These observations are not just ridiculous sounding, but they sound so scandalous to my ears. Finally, Amoris Laetitia is offensive to a pious ear when it promotes the notion of sex education for the young in a public classroom setting. Furthermore, Amoris Laetitia continues to promote the error that the primary goal of